I thought I'd show you just some trade numbers to show you what's happened on the trade book side, because it's not just on the scholarly side that we're going to see disintermediation. The trade people have experienced it at a much faster pace, and there's far more concern in the trade sector, especially with the big six in New York, and I'm not talking about any lawsuits either. I just picked some nonfiction titles year to year to give you an idea that print sales for bestsellers, these are #1 bestsellers, has been all over the place and has actually experienced a little decline. In 1994, In the Kitchen with Rosie, you may not remember that book. Rosie Daly was Oprah Winfrey's chef, who then wrote a book, and it was highlighted on the Oprah show, and she was a wonderful person who loved books and really did a lot for the book industry. Sold for over almost 5.5 million copies. Some of these other books, I'm sure many of you know. These are nonfiction. Tuesdays with Maury, 2.5 million. You start to see numbers all over the place. Rick Warren did a book that sold a phenomenal number in 2 years. Very unusual. This is what's happened recently. We're actually seeing the #1 bestseller in the low 2 million range. Here are ebook sales. These are hard numbers from Publishers Weekly. When you look at bestseller lists, you just see lists. Once a year, Publishers Weekly will release actual hard unit data. In 2011, the #1 ebook in the United States was The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest, Stieg Larsson, who's unfortunately deceased, sold 775,000 copies. And #2 was John Grisham. Yes, that's a nonfiction book that Grisham wrote, did 550,000 ebooks. Not bad. 2012, The Help. It was obviously a tie-in with a movie. 1.95 million units, ebooks. #2, #3. #3 in 2012 sold more than #1 in 2011. I thought I'd show you some basic demographic data. I think the book publishing industry, whether it's print and or digital, will survive. It's an important business. It's a cultural and a commercial business. But one of the things you really need to know when you look at market drivers is what's the population. So when you start to see these numbers, look for trends. This is data from the U.S. Department of Commerce Bureau of the Census. Now, they've been doing this since 1790. Their data is about as good as you can find in the world. You'll notice that particular line is under the age of 5. Notice from the year 2010 forward, we're looking at growth in under 5, 5 to 9, and 10 to 14. These are potential consumers of your products. Here's 15 to 19, 20 to 24, and 25 to 29. These are probably existing consumers of your products. You can actually see there were some flat years. Here's 2010, folks. Now, there will be one dip for 15 to 19. Not a good sign for colleges, but that's another story for another day. But eventually that takes off, and eventually by 2020, 2025, we're looking at growth rates. Here's 30 to 34, 35 to 39, 40 to 44. You can actually see, again, from 2010 forward, in most cases except for 40 to 44, we're looking at growth rates. By the way, 66% of all books bought and read in the United States are by women. The average age, 44. That 40 to 44 stat is more than just interesting. Now here's, did I skip one? Okay, that's 45 to 49, 50 to 54, 55 to 59. Again, looking at the year 2010, we start to see a little decline there in 45 to 49. We see some decline in 50 to 54, and eventually some decline in 56. These are prime book buyers, general readers, your market. And we'll go to the next slide. Here's 60 to 64, 65 to 74, and 75 to 84. As you know from Social Security data, people tend to live longer, hopefully with good eyesight and with enough discretionary income, eager to buy your e-books. The only line that actually is a little depressing is right here. It's 75 to 84. This line is 60 to 64. This is 66 to 74. Now, here's the U.S. resident population, 2009 to 2013. Notice anything interesting about that line? Now, I couldn't fit them all on. That's 2009 to 2013. That's 2014 to 2018. The chart couldn't be big enough or it would be too small to see. There's 2019 to 2023. What we're looking at is steady total increase in the U.S. population, which is a very, very good sign for a lot of you. Here's 2024 to 2028. I'll end with some conclusions. I had not talked to Richard Brown ahead, so some of these ideas may sound a little familiar. I think it's not likely in the short run that Apple will approach university presses. We saw last week the closing of the University of Missouri Press. There's been a little backlash about that, but I assume it's closed based on what the University of Missouri website has indicated. So I think it's prudent for university presses to consider the following, not necessarily in this order. One, I think university presses should get together and create the equivalent of CourseSmart. CourseSmart was created in August 2007 by the big 5 college textbook publishers. They own it. They don't run it. They turn over a book. They determine which book at what price. It's rented for 6 months. They're not involved in any pricing. Each press decides what they want to do. This is a very important site. There's a slight variation of this site. It's called www.inkling.com. Inkling is an enriched book publisher, an enriched textbook publisher, and what they're doing is they're selling textbooks by the chapter. I think the university press community, admittedly, you've got some large, some medium, some small, and some really small presses. As Richard said, the average is about 3 million. As you can see with Oxford, they're almost 1 billion. You've got a really diverse population. I think they need to get together and create a website to post their products and sell directly to consumers. Direct to consumer is not just a threat. It's a fact that will become important. 2, I think relying on soft money is great. In the long run, soft money disappears. I don't think it's a long-term strategy. I think small and medium-sized presses will have to consider, Missouri maybe should have considered it, and that is some sort of a consortium, maybe a regional consortium based on a very, very successful one, University Press of New England. That's how Northeastern University Press survived. I think some of these small presses have to consider doing something in order to avoid the Missouri situation. I think some presses have become operating units as part of a library. Richard talked about this very briefly. I think more of them need to get cover. I think more of them need to move into the library. To close down a library is unthinkable. To close down a press takes 10 seconds. That is something more and more libraries. And the ones that are the presses that are parts of libraries, I think, have been successful. And it's Temple, and it's our good friends at Purdue, Charles Watkinson, for example, who's very involved in SSP. Those are some recommendations I think the university press people could consider. In terms of the commercial scholarly publishers, I think the growth in new title output that I showed a few minutes ago, unsustainable. It's intellectually exciting. It's unsustainable. These presses are under pressure from the financial service companies that own them. And if you drill down and look at who owns these commercial scholarly presses, certain little names pop up. How about Citibank, Neuberger, Allianz? It goes on and on and on. They have to report to those people. The quest for return on invested capital is going to become far more difficult when scholarly publishers in certain parts of the world, maybe the Pacific Rim, maybe those that have sovereign wealth fund money, start to increase their title output. And that's actually something that was developed in Volume 3 of that book the University of Toronto Press did, and also Volume 2, which dealt with scholarly publishing in emerging nations. Those emerging nations may not need us. They're going to develop their own scholarly presses. Many of these presses in the commercial sector have the financial and technological resources to become very effective in direct-to-consumer sales. The trade people are moving in that direction. I think this community needs to move in that direction. How big some of these presses become could be interesting. And there are always business and regulatory concerns. So, back to question number 1. How big of an impact? The impact will be massive. It's going to transform the basic business strategies and business structures of the entire scholarly publishing industry. Not in the next 10 minutes, not in the next 10 days, but in the short run. We're going to see this by 2014, 2015. Presses that do not plan and move toward direct-to-consumer will find that Hobbes was optimistic when he said that life was nasty, brutish, and short. Question 2, will it be positive or negative? It all depends on where you are in the food chain. The economics of publishing are harsh and unforgiving, but they're understandable. There will be winners and there will be losers. This industry will confront many challenges, but they'll have to confront the fact that the number of bookstores is declining, and certain online services that have been very important in the development of the sale of books might well become more Hobbesian. As consumers buy and use more e-readers, more e-tablets, and more e-books, editors and publishers and authors, everyone in this community, might want to ponder the thoughts of another famous 20th century philosopher. The most famous one ever to, in essence, teach in the Bronx, where we have our campus. It's going to get late early out there, folks. You better have a flashlight. You better have a strategy. You better have a structure, because it's going to get late. And who's going to be left standing? I hope everybody in this room is. This is a great business. It's involved in culture and commercial, and it employs all of my sons. Thank you. We have a group of 5 students who will certainly present a lot of very interesting information, and they will also, in a sense, piggyback onto our direct-to-consumer disintermediation argument. Thank you.